All right, so episode 27 here, the second time we will be discussing this. Um, yeah, next up is going to be Trent Slater. We're just going to keep going down the line here. What a season looking back on this, man. What a season from Trent. He finished 9-5. He made it all the way to the UFL Cup, lost to David in a tough loss off the backs of Derrick Henry. But you could arguably say this was Trent's best season of his career. He had a really good year in 2023. And, Trent was always known as a good, consistent owner. He was never looked upon in terms of an elite owner. And I think that's where things severely changed over the course of this entire season is he is now looked at among one of the elites. And this was his best power score year to date. He is now, I think, only one of two owners to have four or more power scores above 80. If not, he is the only one. This was his most points scored since 2022. So the most points he has scored since the expansion to 16 teams. And really, this is last year in 2024 was his only really rough season since 2020. So this was finally a year where Trent could silence some doubters. And yeah, and I thought it was incredible top to bottom. So just kind of looking at in terms of power rankings, he was third, right behind Bryson and Chase. This moved to Chase, but it was Bryson. So third, little bit of luck, but it's okay. So had a pretty solid league win percentage. And then just looking at in terms of his schedule and how his season progressed, started off the year 3-0. So really good start. However, this is what we're used to with Trent, is that early 3-0 start. I mean, it was nothing. I think that's where we kind of fell into a trap with Trent, is we all just believed that this was just another good start. He started 2-0 in 2022, 2-0 in 23, 2-0 in 24, 3-0 this year, and he always loses the next, five, four, two, three games. And he did again this year. He lost the next three. So we just thought, well, there it is. That's the Trent we're used to, is a really good start and then he tails off. And that's no shot at T. That's no shot. That can be in injuries, that could be multiple factors. Um, but that's what we were expecting. And you could kind of see it with the 89, 83 win to Will. It was like, oh, is he going to start tailing off here? But he just stayed par for the course. He stayed par for the course. Now, granted, he does lose his next three. Herbert goes through a little bit of a rough stretch. And but I will say this, and here's what was interesting, is it was after week three that he made a trade, that Trent made a trade. And so he starts the year 3-0, and then he makes this gutsy trade to get Chase Brown. And the deal was he received Chase Brown and Cooper Cup, and he traded Jared, Isaiah Pacheco, Debo Samuel, and a 2026 second. And everybody was just wondering, like, why? Like, you started off 3-0. Why are you making a trade? But if you look at the underlying numbers, Pacheco in week one did not help Trent at all with 3 points. And then Debo in week three did not help Trent at all with 3 points. So he could see that there was aging that was obvious with Debo and Pacheco. And I think Trent wanted to get out ahead of it before they really started tailing off. And he just wanted to go ahead and get the best value out of it that he could. So, and by the way, I do want to mention real quick how we got here. I would be remiss if I didn't include Trent's 2025 UFL draft. So Trent did have the fourth overall pick, and there was a lot of questions in terms of, is Trent going to take Det McMillan or Travis Hunter? He ended up taking McMillan with the fourth overall pick. That seemed to be really good. And then another thing that he did on draft night, which I thought was if this would have been the third candidate for trade of the year. He traded away Darnell Mooney and Evan Ingram, freed up $21 million in cap space, and received Zay Flowers and pick number 23. That's incredible. Mooney and Ingram both had really, really bad seasons, and Zay Flowers, much better than them, had a solid season. So, and he took that Elijah Royal with that pick. Ironically, Elijah Royal is now back on Brandon's team. But yeah, I thought that was just a really good trade, and that's when I started to realize Trent is no longer. Trent used to kind of be somebody when the format changed a little bit. It's going to take him a second or two before he starts getting crazy. He really wants to kind of survey how things are going. And he immediately just put foot on the gas this year. He made a trade at the draft. He made a trade after week three. And that can also bite you. We've seen that in terms of somebody like Owen. But no offense to Owen, but I thought he just made all the right calculated decisions before the season even started. And you got to remember, he took Debo with the 27th pick, with his first pick in 2024. So this is a tough trade for Trent to make after week three. But he knew that if he was going to go and try and win a championship, this is what he had to do. So he goes and gets Chase Brown, who was just excellent. Excellent for Trent, especially down the stretch. He started off a little bit slow. Trent starting to think, great, here we go again. And then Chase Brown put together one of the most consistent elite performances from week seven onward. Just awesome, awesome performances, especially once we get to the playoffs. So, so Trent finds a way. After he loses his next three, we're going into week number 7 against Mason, and he's 3-3, and now things are starting to look, bleak again. Zay Flowers is putting up inconsistent numbers at 5. By that point, I will say Justin Herbert was playing really good football. But then in week 7, Justin Herbert played really, really good football. 46 points. Chase Brown comes in with James Cook on the bye and puts up 20. Rashee Rice comes back from his suspension with Zay Flowers on bye and puts up 24. And then a 50 piece from Devontae Smith. That is exactly what Trent needed to kind of get things back on track. And that game served to be really, really important because Trent and Mason would both become playoff teams eventually. So then you're starting to think, well, this is interesting. Trent is now, 4-3, and now he's got his toughest test probably today to date against Devin, and he just puts up an absolute scoring fest. Could not think of the word, but scoring fest. And he puts up 188. Herbert goes off again for 35 points. James Cook with a 59 piece. Are you kidding me? 216 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. What a game from James Cook. And I will say James Cook took another step forward this year in terms of being a really, really elite running back. I think he's now regarded as an elite running back. Before he was great, now he's elite. And that's exactly what Trent needed. Rashee Rice with now a 30 piece coming back from his suspension. Ted McMillan with 26 points. That was probably his best game to date, besides week 2, yes, with 99 receiving yards. So now all of a sudden, and you could even peek at Chase Brown, put him 31 on the bench, and it's like, this is interesting. This is interesting. We're starting to see a Trent that is now progressing forward once again, and maybe he is going to be a problem. He takes care of Taleb in a close game, and then he just stayed hot from then on. He won 8 of his next 10 games going into the UFO Cup. So he just stayed hot down the stretch, and that was the difference maker from years past with Trent. Was he always sort of tailed off? I mean, to end 2024, he loses 4 in a row. He lost 5 of his last 6. 2023 was a good finish. He just choked in the semifinals to Cole Pletcher. So this was exactly what he needed to do to get back to the postseason. And we'll look at his first round matchup against Devin. So Trent was actually so he finished the year 9-5. Trent finished or he watched that game with myself and Brandon and Devin. They were in attendance together for that game. It was awesome. The energy was electric, and Trent took care of Devin 90-78. Now, For people that are saying, you could say, oh, he got lucky, he only put up 90 points. What if he faced somebody like Bryson? Yes. However, here's what you have to look at. This is why seeding matters. This is why regular season matters. If Trent if Trent was the 5 seed like Bryson, because Bryson had the same record as Trent. So Bryson went all the way down to the 5 seed with Trent at the 2 seed. Now, why did Trent get the 2 seed over Bryson? Because he put up more points throughout the regular season. He put up more points throughout the regular season, and that'll get you further than the other teams. It'll help you in the standings. Therefore, you face a 7 seed like Devin, who was the lowest seed going into this. Devin was absolutely banged up across the board. And, you get to go up against a Darius Slayton. Now, granted, Devin's team was loaded. I'm not going to lie. From running back to quarterback to tight end, you just got an all-time bad performance from Joe Burrow. I can't. But you need some luck along the way. You need some luck along the way. And James Cook put up 39. That was electric. That is exactly what Trent needed. So now he's gotten to a point where, and he didn't make any other deals really other than that Chase Brown trade throughout the rest of the season. And it's tough in terms of what lineups to put out in the season. It's tough because you want to monitor the trends, but you also want to look at matchups. And then other times it's just hoping that they pop off that particular day. So, Ted McMillan only put up 6. That could have really cost Trent. Justin Herbert only put up 5. Now, Herbert became a little bit of a weak spot here down the stretch. And that's something that we'll look at, um, after we take a look at all these games and stuff. So he beats Devin 90-78 in round one, and then just like that, he flips again and he beats Cole for the largest blowout in UFL playoff history, 194-94 in the semifinals. The difference that 2 years can make. He shows up to Cole Pletcher, and I think this is the difference of Trent. He loses to Cole Pletcher in 2023. I think he lost 73 to 135. He just got absolutely bulldozed. And he comes out 2 years later and he finally puts on the show that he needed to put on in the most important game of his life. This was the longest he had ever gotten. And there he goes. And I do not know why I just said Justin Herbert struggled down the stretch because he just put up a 52 bomb. That's incredible. Everybody in Trent's lineup went off. Zay Flowers, Ted McMillan all went 20 plus. Chase Brown. And again, this is what I was talking about with Chase Brown. This is why this won trade of the year. These last 2 games from Chase Brown were elite. Now, the only player to have a more elite 2 game stretch over the last 2 games just happened to be across the screen with David Katz when Derrick Henry put up 100 points in his last 2 games. But Chase Brown was right behind him, putting up 79, I believe, over his last 2 games. So, really good stuff. Justin Herbert puts on a masterclass with 52 points. And honestly, I didn't realize how big of a deal that was because going into that, he did not score over 14 points in his last 5 games. Going into that, that's insane. And Trent had to rely on him. He had to trust his gut. With Marcus Mariota being his backup, you got to keep Herbert in the game, and it paid huge, huge dividends. Devontae Smith really, really worked out here. Trent acquired Devontae Smith a couple years ago in a deal with Cole Pletcher, I believe. And a lot of people don't talk about that deal, but it actually almost worked out for both sides. It was Devontae Smith and Cole Pletcher received Alec Pierce in a 2025 first. Now, I do wonder that 2025 first, gosh, I wonder if that was used to take Travis Hunter. That's really funny. Or if that was a later pick, I don't know how all that panned out, but that's quite interesting actually. Alec Pierce no longer with Cole Pletcher. Um, but yeah, the largest blowout in UFL playoff history. That's incredible. So now all of a sudden, Trent has all the momentum going into his first ever UFL Cup championship. This was his first ever, and I just remember the buildup. I knew he was confident, but I knew he knew what he was going up against. He had this amazing playoff run. It's awesome, but you're about to go face the most dominant team over the past 2 years. Let's call it what it is. And we talked to his mom Joni, and she was cautiously optimistic. His sister, so his family was on board. And around the league, you talk to sources around the league, and there was a majority of people who thought Trent was going to win this game. And I think they were just rooting for Trent to pull off the upset. I don't know if they actually really thought he was going to pull it off. Um, but he does lose. He does come out against David Katz. He rocked the same lineup back to back weeks. It did help Rashee Rice did not play the last two games. And he does lose 131 to 84. Ted McMillan only puts up one, Devontae Smith seven, Chase Brown 42, put the team on his back. But he went up against Derrick Henry, who put up 71 points. What are you going to do? If Derrick Henry only put up 20 points, which is still a good game, it's a pretty average game for Derrick Henry. If Derrick Henry put up 20 points, Trent would have won. He just ran into an absolute buzzsaw in Derrick Henry. Nobody else really popped off, JSN, Nico. So that's it. Trent was one game away from being $1,000 richer. One game away. But overall, just looking at this season, it was just incredible top to bottom. And now that I get to look at the roster as a whole, Justin Herbert finishing as QB 11, 323 points, 20 points per game. I liked Herbert's season. I thought he had a really good season, especially at the beginning. The issue with Herbert is the bad are really, really bad. And I'm hoping a change in offensive coordinator will help, but at some point, Herbert has to perform in the biggest stage. Now he did in the semifinals against Cole Ryan. And he did, but in real life and in fantasy, Trent is going to need Herbert to put on a show when it matters most. And he's going to need to try to limit the really, really bad games. The week 11 through week 15 stretch has to go because that can derail a season. Now, luckily, Trent's season week 11 through 15 just happened to be just fine. He went 4-1 over that stretch. So, I mean, luckily he got away with it. But if he had faced anybody other than Devin, that's it. You're done. And Herbert could be to blame for that. So Herbert has to take a step up. James Cook was phenomenal. And we've now seen another level of James Cook in terms of just his running ability, his contact balance, his vision, but more than anything, his explosiveness. On any given Sunday, he can put up a 60, 50-yard touchdown run, and it's electric. It's electric. He had only three single-digit games the entire season. You don't even need to count week 18 against the Jets, so really only two. And for perspective, Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, had four or five. So Cook is very rarely going to give you a subpar performance. He was just dominant, uh, touchdown production, all of it, all season long. Zay Flowers finished as wide receiver eight. Finished as wide receiver eight, 314 points. We don't talk about that. Everybody kind of thinks of Zay Flowers as just this, I don't believe he's an elite one, and I don't even know if he is a true one. I think he's a really, really good number two. But wide receiver eight, what are we doing? He he in terms of that trade with Brandon, freeing up that much money. Darnell Mooney was I believe $13 million. Evan Ingram was 8 million. He freed up 21 and then he took on 3 million with Zay. That's incredible, man. That's incredible. He saved 18 million with that trade. And Zay Flowers put up a really consistent season. He only put up 25 plus points, I think three times, but he never he only had one, two, three single digit games. So he was just going to give you what you need each week, and that's what Trent needed, especially with a rookie like Ted McMillan, who you just didn't know what kind of roller coasters you were going to get with McMillan. But speaking of, this is the best rookie award for a reason. This is the best rookie award. Ted McMillan does win best rookie, 293 points. It was a really phenomenal season. Honestly, that draft pick of Trent taking Ted McMillan over instead of Travis Hunter proved to be the difference maker. He put up the most wide receiver points since Ted McMillan or since Puka Nacua in 2023. This was a really, really much needed season from McMillan, and he's only probably going to take a step forward next year. 26 points against Buffalo week 8, 48 at one point, 130 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. McMillan proved that this is a true number one receiver, which is very exciting to see. Devontae Smith, wide receiver 22, 15 points per game. That's pretty average for Devontae. That's pretty average. Now, if AJ Brown does get traded, how will that look next season? I assume positively for Devontae. And there is some things in terms of Trent's salary cap that we'll look at in a later series this offseason. But just looking at 2025 alone, the 50 bomb week 7 was awesome. 183 receiving yards, 1 touchdown is electric. And that's what Devontae Smith can give you on any week. He was average at best throughout the playoffs, and that's something that, Trent will monitor. But overall, a pretty solid season for Devontae. And then Chase Brown, running back 8, 333 points. This is the best trade award. It is because the Nico trade with David was amazing. I think David would have won the cup regardless. That's just how good his team was. So I kind of try to look at impact. Chase Brown's impact from Trent from week 7 onward. I mean, let's just see. From week 7 onward, Trent lost until the David game 2 games. Like I said, he won 8 out of his last 10. And a big part of that was because of Chase Brown. And what's going to happen if Cincinnati actually gets a competent offensive line to run block? Um, that is going to look really, really good. So Chase Brown, really good season, and then Trent's bench was solid. Hunter Henry, tight end 4. Nobody talks about the season Hunter Henry had. Rasheed Rice. Was on Trent's bench at the end of the year because he didn't play. So what are we going to get if we get a healthy Rasheed Rice? Um, and Trent's history with Rasheed Rice is hysterical. How Trent got him. I think at one point he was with Devin, and then I think he drafted him 43 overall that next year. There's a funny story to that. Overall, this team was somewhat built in 2024 when Trent took Herbert 91 overall, Rasheed 43rd. Um, but a lot of it was just through trades and acquisitions and signings from then on. Zay Flowers trade, Ted McMillan draft, Devontae Smith trade, Chase Brown trade. James Cook was acquired through trade. So, and I didn't even realize this until now. So that's two, three, four of Trent's 6 starters were acquired through trades. That's not like Trent. That's a new Trent Slater, and he's hitting on all cylinders. And I would argue there's nobody better right now in this league at trading than Trent Slater. There's nobody better. There's nobody better. He's acquired most of all of his players through trade. That's really, really good stuff. The James Cook, a lot of people don't know about the James Cook trade. It won trade of the year. Um, Andrew Stiffel, who ironically has had James Cook, Christian McCaffrey, he's dealt all these players. Um, but yeah, Trent acquired James Cook, Brandon Ayuk. Jeez, that deal is amazing. And he gave up Kareem Hunt, Michael Thomas, and the 2024 first, and there's other picks involved. But yeah, back in 2024, Trent got James Cook. And back in 2024 or 2023, he also got Isaiah Pacheco, who he used to get Chase Brown. He is calculated. He's calculated, he's decisive, and he's pushing all the right buttons. Cooper Kupp, I assume he'll be let go this offseason. Most of Trent's bench never really got to play because his only real injury throughout this year was Trey Benson. Rasheed Rice was suspension, but other than that, he stayed pretty healthy, which is good. But yeah, I mean, again, it was a phenomenal, phenomenal season, man. It ends in a tough, tough loss, and ironically, Trent and David did not play in 2024 or 2025. They had not faced each other in 3 years, which is insane to think about, but it's true. And up until this UFO Cup. So wild, wild stuff. Trent's season ends 11-6. It's a success. I'm sorry. And Trent is one of the reasons we are changing it to where, the entry fee's going up $60, but that's going to allow the UFL Cup loser to make $60. He's going to make his money back. So the winner still gets 1,000 next year, but the loser in the UFL Cup gets his money back with 60 because it is a success to make the UFL Cup. It is. It's not as much of it's not near as a success as winning it. You're not even close. But making it, you should get your money back because Trent deserved it. He did everything the right way. And if he's going to lose to a 71-point performance, he should at least get his money back. So Trent's one of the biggest reasons we are implementing that rule. But yeah, man, it was a success through and through. He did everything the right way. In terms of roster, we'll look at that in future videos. But yeah, so Trent Slater lost in the UFL Cup game. However, all signs are pointing in the right direction. He is trending upwards. He is here to stay. Trent Slater is an elite owner, whether you want to admit it or not.